you miss me? I've been out of it comatose, but the depression.
Hello and welcome to Controlled Burns, the weekly hobbyless podcast with me, Slow Burn from Wildfire Gaming. Today I want to spend some time talking about a game that has absolutely consumed my free time over the last couple of weeks, which is Hades, the 2020 masterpiece from Supergiant Games. I'm going to talk about my history with this game, as well as some stats and takeaways from my current playthrough, which is my first time playing through the game since it came out in 2020, and rank some of the aspects of the game that I would say are my favorite things about it, as well as some of my favorite of the game's characters, boons, weapons, and bosses. So if you're a fan of Hades, you come to the right place. Just a reminder that Controlled Burns is a weekly hobby list podcast with a particular focus on lists and topics related to video games, music, TV, and film, as well as other hobbies and aspects of pop culture. If you're interested in writing into the podcast and having your comments or questions read on air, you can write into the podcast at controlledburns@gmail.com, and that's with an ES on Burns. So to start, I want to talk a little bit about my history with Hades. I actually played this game right around the time when it came out in 2020. I didn't do with any of the uh, early access stuff, but when it first came out in 2020, 1.0, particularly on the Switch, is where I spent my time with it originally. I wasn't immediately drawn to the game. It wasn't like it was something that was really on my radar. I had never and still have never played any other Supergiant games. And I'd also never really played a roguelike before. And then on top of that, Game Informer was always my primary outlet for just being up on what was going on in video games. And Matt Miller, who was the reviewer for the game, he gave it a good score, but it was like a 8 point something. I can't remember exactly what it was, and I could probably find out, but it's a pain since GameStop has stupidly and insidiously wiped their website from the face of the planet. But I know it was like an 8 point something. But outside of that review, I kind of got the inkling that that was sort of like on the lower end because I heard a lot of praise for it elsewhere, particularly from Dan Tack, who was also a Game Informer editor at that time. Now I think he works at Bandai Namco. And it just in 2020 in general, obviously that was the big COVID year. It was my last year where I was single. And so it was just a year, and it was just a great year for video games, an amazing year for video games, a lot of amazing new releases. And so I was just really, that whole year, really, all I did was play new releases that came out in 2020. And just based on everything that I had played and still had on my docket, and then just based on the praise I was hearing for Hades and for how relatively cheap it was, I did decide to get it on Switch whenever it was on a little bit of a sale, even. So I can't remember what I paid for it, but I think it was less than $20, so it was an amazing deal for sure. But then once I started playing it, I pretty much immediately fell in love with it. The style of the game is just undeniably great, particularly with the way the game uses music that adds and loses instruments based on what's happening in the game. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then the isometric perspective was also fresh to me, as I had never really played a lot of action combat games from that perspective. Like, for example, I'm not a big player of Diablo and games like that. Um, the game definitely had a learning curve, but I kept playing it, and I'm not sure exactly how many runs it took for me to do get my first escape. It was probably around in between 15 and 20, if I had to guess, because um, yeah, it was probably 15 or so. Because on my Switch it says that I have 28 escape attempts, and I have done 10 at least full escape attempts and gotten to credits on the Switch. So probably around the 15 attempt mark. Um, I remember distinctly playing it. There's an interesting memory here where, I was playing it in handheld mode a lot on the Switch. And think I got my Switch in 2019, so it's still fairly new to the Switch. And so it's kind of novel concept being able to play like these big games on the go. And I remember distinctly playing it for hours in the parking lot of a hospital where my stepdad was getting a colonoscopy for hours in that parking lot. Because it was during that time where you could only have like one guest with you when you went into a hospital, and my brother had gone in with him, and so one of us had to sit out in the car, and I decided that it would be me since I had my Switch and I was going to be perfectly happy. It was kind of cold, but other than that, I remember sitting out there and playing it and just having an amazing time and losing over and over again. I had not made it to the end yet. I remember kept losing to the bull and Asterius fight, or Asterius' bull. but losing to the bull and whoever that guy is that uh, has the spear. I'll look at my notes here shortly and get to the bottom of that. But just getting to there and dying over and over, just really memorable, kind of interesting early experience I had with Hades. Um, I well, I did finish the game. I got all the 10 exits and like basically got to credits, and then I stopped there. But what I definitely didn't do was really engage in any of the extra content that you could do, the side content, I guess you could call it, the completionist content. Whenever it was on Switch, because I knew there weren't any trophies or anything since I was playing it on Switch, and so I wasn't really, I guess I wasn't really, and that was kind of the year that began trophy hunting, so I wasn't really in that mindset yet. And I don't think I even knew, like, I wasn't really looking anything up about the game. And so, like, I don't think I even knew that to buy the faded list, which you can buy from the, whatever they call it, the house contractor, I think, in the game. And it's basically just like an achievement system where you get like amazing rewards for doing it. They're heavily incentivized to get it as early as possible and really start working through those. But I didn't even know that was a thing. And so like I was really just playing it for the trying to get out and interacting with the characters and all that stuff. I was just taking a look at my save, my original save on the Switch earlier today to prepare for this podcast, and I never used any keepsakes other than, although I did unlock them all, but I never used any other than the Lucky Tooth and Evergreen Acorn. Everything else was just 1 star. Never got any of the Chthonic Companions. Never even came close to maxing out a relationship. Never even unlocked the administrative privilege. I only had 7 faded lists in total complete, and they were all lists that you wouldn't have to go out of your way for. It's basically just finish the game with all the weapons, and that was all I had really done in that game. And I still loved it. It was still pretty high on my list, definitely my top 50 games of all time. And I looked back on it very fondly. But that was just kind of the end of my time with it, and I moved on to other things because I was playing a lot of games in 2020 that I was trying to really stay up on all the big new releases that I really wanted to play, and there were a lot, so my time just kind of went elsewhere. But then I think it was in 2021 whenever it released on other consoles, including PS5, and I did pick it up when it released, just with the interest of one day getting the trophies for it, and then that desire to do that, to go back to the game and kind of come at it with a more completionist mindset, only kind of grew with time. And then now that Hades 2, I know it's been early access, but now that Hades 2 is set to like really go through its big release this year in 2025, I decided now was the time. And I started up a couple of weeks ago. I started up Hades, and have just been hopelessly addicted to it to a degree I don't think I've felt in some time, particularly gaming on my own versus when showing games to my wife. Because I have gotten really into some of those playthroughs with my wife, but just for a game that I'm playing just for me, my own personal time, it's really got hooks in me. I've got 43 hours in it so far, and they have just absolutely melted away and led to more than a few nights where I stayed up way too late for sure. And I wouldn't be surprised if tonight was another one. But that's kind of my history with Hades, and now I want to talk a little bit about what I love so much about the game. I've ranked the top 6 things that I like about it, and I think these are the 6 things, kind of in order. Like the higher we get, the more I like them. But these are kind of the 6 things, the 6 keys I think to Hades' success and make it a really amazing game. And number 6 is the art style. I included Hades on my list of the top 25 most beautiful video games of all time for a reason. The cell shaded look and then just the surprising variety and detail in the environments is absolutely arresting. And then the animation work is also very fluid. I love the little touches, like how the weapons and animations change depending on which aspect you're using and then which boons you have equipped at any given time. And then, of course, the portraits of all the characters themselves are just absolute works of art. Moving on to number 5, though, I have just the characters and storytelling in the game. Here in a moment, I'm going to go through and rank all of the 30 main characters in the game. Most of them, I will admit, are not real standouts in terms of video games as a whole, but they all work together to create a cast that I think is a little bit better than the sum of its parts. All the gods are colorful and memorable, and then some of the supporting cast and their side quests are surprisingly engaging. And more than anything, I think the way the game rolls out its storytelling and character work through the little snippets and dialogue in between and during each run is what makes it all come together to work beautifully. And it's just a really unique approach to storytelling that is highly randomized and personalized to your playthrough because it is very reactive to what you've done in the game and what you're trying to do in the game. And I just think that that's really cool, and it just makes it feel like each playthrough is really its own unique thing, and the characters around you are really reacting to that. So very, very cool stuff in the way the game approaches characters and storytelling. And number four, I have what I kind of call the combat feel of the game. And this is including the boss fights and enemy variety as well, all kind of rolled up into this umbrella. And as a combat focused game, this is definitely an important category for this game to get right. I generally prefer stuff like characters and storytelling to combat mechanics in terms of the things that I prioritize in the games that I want to spend my time with. But there's such a focus in Hades and done so well that I have to give them the edge here in this little ranking. The dodges are snappy and precise, and so are the various combos that you can do with the weapons. But the overall button combinations and moves that you can execute at any given time are simple enough to easily grasp and kind of lock in with. Then the enemy variety is really excellent. With there's so many enemies across the four major quote unquote levels of the game. So in any given run, there's a good chance that you won't even encounter all of the different kinds of enemies because there's just so many of them. And so that kind of is great and adds to the replayable factor of the game. Then the boss fights as well are all very fun. They're challenging, satisfying to master, all of which is good because you do have to fight one version of them or another over and over again on each run. And a little bit later, I'm going to uh, give my ranking of the boss fights in the game. But up at number three, I've put music and atmosphere. The game wouldn't work nearly as well as it does if it didn't absolutely nail its atmosphere and tone, which is taken to another level, I think, with its approach to music. There's a great multi-part documentary on the game that's available for free on YouTube thanks to NoClip, which I highly recommend. One of those episodes focuses heavily on the music aspect of the game with composer Darren Korb, who also voices many of the game's characters, including the main character Zagreus. So, we're talking about a very talented individual here. But he did a great job of using instruments that feel authentic to the ancient Greek tones that the game is going for, but while creating some truly fantastic compositions that complement the game's action, as well as some of its slower moments. The use of the theremin in particular, which is kind of like that whistling instrument that you hear as you play through the majority of the game, it really kind of pulls everything together and really gives like a really good sense of atmosphere and tone that feels unique to Hades. That's a great touch. But I think my favorite thing that he does with the music is just the way the instruments come in and drop out dynamically depending on what's going on in the current run. So, for instance, I particularly love it when you finish a room, and there's no more combat in that room until you go through the next door, and everything drops out, but the bass is just like the bass going until you go to the next room. So it's like that. Bam, bam, da-doom, doom, ba-doom, doom, ba-doom, doom, doom, doom. That's like an example of one of the songs that plays. And it's just like so cool to have everything drop off and just have that. He wrote some absolutely killer bass lines. So really good stuff that he did there. Definitely one of my favorite aspects of the game. And then just the songs in general, they're mostly kind of acoustic, which my understanding is that's kind of what you would expect from Darren Korb's previous work in other Supergiant games. But then whenever you are going into a really challenging room or a boss battle, there's like a metal version of all the songs that come in, whether it's like really plugged in guitars, really loud and aggressive, that just perfectly accentuates what you're doing in the combat. So it's really just genius stuff that with the music that never gets old. They never wear out their welcome. It's just perfection, really, and it comes to a video game soundtrack. So number two, I have the variety and randomization of boons and weapons. One of my favorite things just in video games and just games in general and life in some ways is just randomization. And Hades is basically randomization the game. This works for a number of reasons, starting with the incredibly high number of boons the devs created, and then basically rolling three of them at any given time from whichever god you're interacting with, and letting you pick between them, which makes for just wildly different runs and play styles, particularly when you're trying to get all of them at least once for completionist purposes, via obviously the trophies, but also just the faded lists that are built into the game. Then the weapons are less randomized. You do get to pick whichever one you want for each run, but each run will give one random weapon the Dark Thirst mechanic, which basically just makes you increases your rewards for if you use that weapon during that run. So it definitely encourages using whichever random weapon gets that buff. So, which I will typically do. So if I'm going into a run, I don't necessarily know which weapon I'm going to use yet until I look at them and see which one has the Dark Thirst for that run. And then on top of this, each weapon has four aspects to choose from for any given run, and that then they change significantly how the weapons work, and they allow for experimentation and variety. And then on top of that, each weapon can receive random dataless hammer upgrades during the run that also dramatically change how they function. So you add all these random elements together to create an absolutely addictive, highly replayable formula that just encourages experimentation and expression as you build your character each run. So really brilliant stuff. I think this is kind of the bread and butter of what makes Hades a great game. And this would have been number one if I was making this list 4 years ago. But my new number one, my absolute favorite thing about Hades is the completionist aspect of it. Perhaps nothing in gaming is more satisfying to me than a great completionist checklist. They're easy to get wrong, but so rewarding when they are done right. And I don't know that I've ever seen it done better than in Hades. Giving the player incentives to experiment with every weapon, boon, and upgrade just increases the player's appreciation for the variety that the developers have on offer. And then just being able to maximize the relationships with each of the characters in the game, which unlocks other bonuses and side quests from them. It's just so unbelievably fun. The developers created so much great stuff for Hades and the completionist checklist, both through the game's trophies, but also through the fated list system that is included in game that basically provides the player with like awesome rewards for checking off various things in the game. It just makes for a tantalizing cocktail that has been nearly impossible for me to put down over the last week. So, all of those factors combined just create what I think is an all-time great game. Definitely one of my favorites. I wouldn't quite put Hades, I don't think, in my top 25, but it's certainly in my top 50. It's definitely moved up my list since I played it last in 2020. I'm just having an amazing time thanks to all of these different factors that we discussed here. So I want to start getting into some lists of things that are specific to Hades. I want to rank the characters, the bosses, the boons that you can get in the game. That's not the individual boons, that would take too long, but because there's hundreds of them. But like the gods in terms of the boons that they offer, and then the weapons. And then at the end, we'll kind of go through some of my stats on my current playthrough. But let's start with the characters because that's where we have the most. That's gonna be the longest list here with 30 characters. So we're gonna rank the characters starting from the bottom at number 30, where I have Hermes. I feel like every incarnation of Hermes, no matter what media it is just kind of he's just kind of irritating, and that certainly rings true here. He kind of goes fast, and that's sort of the end of the story. And he also doesn't have any sort of communication with the other gods. He's completely separate from them, and that's a pretty big disappointment. But it does kind of hammer home how unlikable he is. So I don't know if that was kind of intentional on the part of the devs, but yeah, he'd be at the bottom of my list. Number 29, I have Ares. Who I think is kind of the lamest of the non-Hermes bosses. He just doesn't do much for me. He likes killing, and that's pretty much all the depth that there is to him. At number 28, I have Hypnos. Hypnos is kind of the standout bottom run character of the characters that are in the House of Hades, as there isn't really any depth to him other than he reminds you of what you just died to whenever you come into the house after each run. And even building a relationship with him does basically nothing to change this. So I have him down at number 28. Number 27, I have Athena. There's just not much to latch onto with Athena. I couldn't even really tell you a character trait she has other than maybe proud, but all of the gods are proud, so that's not saying a whole lot. At number 26, I have Skelly. Honestly, I think Skelly ranks as low as he does because I find his voice annoying, but it is fun to wail on him between runs. You know, right before you head out, he's standing there ready for you to wail on him, get a feel for your weapon for you. Head out on your next run, and he's actually one of the only two characters that I've maximized my relationship with so far in my current playthrough. The other being Cerberus, so that's kind of interesting. But yeah, number 26 on my list. Number 25, I have Zeus. Zeus is pretty much how you would expect him to be in Hades. He's just like exactly how Zeus is kind of always portrayed. And there's not much to him other than those base expectations. But apparently he does have a little quest that I haven't gotten to yet that sort of encourages interactions with some of the other gods. That sounds cool, but for now I'm going to stick him here at number 25. At number 24, I have Electro, which is the lowest of the three Fury sisters. Electro just doesn't stick out to me as much as the other two. I do think she's a little bit more fun to fight than Meg, but she definitely has the least going on in terms of personality. She really likes to make Zagreus bleed. She kind of makes fun of him for bleeding red for some reason. But she's not very good at it. So yeah, I have her down at number 24. Number 23, I have Persephone. So this is maybe the hottest take here and probably the biggest disappointment for me of all the characters. But Persephone just doesn't really do much for me, which is a shame considering a conversation with her is kind of the final reward that's driving Zagreus through the game until you reach the post game. And then when she does return to the House of Hades, I haven't, I've done maybe five or so runs since finishing the game. And I've been a little bit disappointed about what she like the lack of interactions in the House of Hades. Like she's definitely talking to other people and that's cool and everything, but there just hasn't been anything particularly noteworthy to latch onto. So not a terrible character, but definitely I don't feel she earns the kind of importance that the story puts on her. So that puts her at number 23 on my list. Number 22, I have Aphrodite. She's another of the Greek gods that pretty much plays exactly to the expectations that you have going in. But it is kind of hard not to be, wooed at least a little bit by her playfully flirtatious personality. I like the lore from Achilles' Notebook that she might be the dangerous of all the gods. I think it's my favorite thing about her portrayal in Hades, number 22. Number 21, I have Artemis. Artemis was a bit of a surprise for me, just given I was unfamiliar with her before Hades. She's not one of the most well-known Greek gods, but I kind of like her more understated, kind of shy personality, combined with her abilities as a hunter. She's obviously a very capable character and a character to be feared in terms of her battle prowess. And then she also gives great boons, so which we'll discuss in a bit. At number 20, I have Poseidon. It's hard not to be swept up by Poseidon's over-the-top cheerful personality, which I think gives him a bit more character than most of the other Greek gods and puts him above the par mark for him. And then I also like how he encourages you to fish because it's fun. At number 19, I have Nyx. Nyx is another character that I find somewhat disappointing in a similar vein to Persephone, just given how cool her design is and her lore ramifications are. But at the end of the day, I just find her personality to be pretty bland and by the books. I'm interested in learning more about her relationship with Chaos, and we'll see where that goes with that side quest, but I haven't gotten through that yet. So for now, Nyx number 19. Number 18, I have Tisiphone. Maybe it's ridiculous to have a character that only knows two words this high on her list, but Tisiphone is just so over the top ridiculous and fun to fight that I just can't help but get a kick out of her and Zagreus' reactions to her when I encounter her on a run. So I've got her up at number 18. Number 17 is Charon. Charon actually has somehow less to say than Tisiphone, yet he actually communicates, I feel, more character than almost all of the Greek gods just based on his interactions with Zagreus, and then kind of hilariously his fury when he catches you stealing from him, which actually results in, my opinion, the toughest boss fight of the game, which is a unique twist. More than anything, it's just always nice to build up some coin on a run and then just run into him, and he's just a very helpful, baleful merchant. So. I've got him at number 17. Kind of has some similarities to the merchant in Resident Evil 4, I would say. Number 16, I have trouble saying this guy's name, but Patroclus. I'm probably giving Patroclus more credit than he deserves right now, based on how I'm really just interested in seeing how things turn out between him and Achilles, because for the most part, he really just kind of sits around and mopes when you encounter him in Elysium. But at the same time, I sure am always glad to see him because of how powerful his rewards for you are. He can replenish all of your death defiance if you're struggling on that run, or otherwise, like really raise your attack power to a significant degree. So, yeah, I like Patroclus a lot. He's number 16. Number 15, I have Theseus. There's certainly not a lot of depth to Theseus, but I do get a kick out of how over the top braggadocious he is, which actually is a bit intimidating in the early game when he can easily and likely will end your run. And then he kind of becomes a little bit more of a joke in the late game when you can usually blast him without breaking too much of a sweat, but it doesn't change how sort of braggadocious he is, which I think is funny. He's really kind of like a great archetypical shit heel that literally plays to the crowd because you are in front of a crowd whenever you fight him, and the old WWE fan in me loves that. At number 14, I have Chaos. Chaos is definitely a character with layers and an interesting sort of enigma that doesn't interact with the other gods, yet is apparently more powerful than all of them. His interactions with Zagreus are by far the most interesting of all of the quote unquote boon gods, and I'm generally excited to pay him a visit during each run, even though it does cause valuable health to do so. At number 13, I have Cerberus, the best boy in Hades. Cerberus is such a lovable lout that it's impossible to look past him. The fact that the game just sets this up and he's always kind of chilling in the corner in the house, and then it gives you a payoff on it when you finally reach the exit of the underworld and you see that he actually is on duty. He's the guard dog, and it's kind of like this hilarious twist reveal as the game then shifts to this quest to find him some food to make him look the other way so you can walk out the door and face Hades. It's a interesting little twist that they had there, and I got a kick out of that. Number 12, I have Dionysus. I can't help but get a kick out of Dionysus. Really laid back approach. Definitely clashes with all the other Greek gods and makes him stand out in an entertaining way. Number 11, I have Megara or Meg. I wish there was a bit more depth to Meg, and I'm kind of banking that there is, considering I'm still nowhere near to maxing out my relationship with her. And then obviously she and Zagreus clearly have some history. But I do enjoy her conversations with others in the House of Hades and appreciate her determination to beat Zagreus back, despite how futile it becomes to her very early on. At number 10, I have Achilles. Achilles is definitely a little bland, but he gets a lot of credit here for being the author of the game's codex, which I think communicates a lot of his personality. And then I'm also very interested in seeing where things go with him and Patroclus. At number 9, I have Eurydice. Well, I don't quite see what Orpheus sees in Eurydice. I love any character that sings great music and is kind of written into the story as a musician that plays the music that obviously the composer wrote in real life, and then like the characters in the game actually react to that music being played. I really love that kind of trope there, and a few games have done it better than Hades does with Eurydice. Her quote unquote opposites attract relationship with Orpheus is also the most interesting one in the game to me, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how it pays off. At number 8, I have Sisyphus. Sisyphus is a great example of subverting expectations, which Hades actually doesn't do a whole lot with its Greek gods. They usually are played pretty close to what you would expect. But Sisyphus is a nice breath of fresh air because rather than being tormented by his lot in life, wherein he has to lug around that giant boulder, he's actually made friends with it and is quite cheerful anytime Zagreus happens to pass him by on one of his runs. So I think that it's kind of a funny take on that character, and I got a kick out of that. Number 7, I have Demeter, which I think is by far the most interesting and layered of the boon gods. Demeter is actually revealed throughout the course of the game to be Zagreus' grandmother, and I'm interested to see if that story thread is going to develop any further because, kind of the story is that Persephone, her daughter, is sort of in hiding, and they know that Zagreus is trying to get out of the underworld, and then he doesn't really want to get out anymore because his family is back together at the end. But he kind of keeps like putting on a face that he keeps trying to get out, and so they kind of keep buying it. And so I'm curious to see if that goes anywhere with Demeter in particular. She's also the most elderly of the group, and she stands out with her the kind of biting personality. She's definitely much less cheerful and outwardly agreeable than her peers. So she definitely is the standout, I feel, as far as the Greek gods go in this game. Well, I guess I can't say all the Greek gods, but the boon gods, the ones that give you boons, is what I'm referring to when I said that. Number 6 here, I have Dusa. Dusa is just an infectious little ball of energy that clearly has a massive crush on Zagreus to the point where she can barely get a word out and then like runs away immediately after talking to him. But their interactions are great, but also her interactions with other characters are hilarious. Like I just recently saw this one where she has this kind of passive aggressive dressing down of Hypnos for sleeping on the job, and he has no idea that because she's like being so passive about it that he has no idea that she's like really kind of coming down on him and kind of calling him lazy. And I just thought that was a hilarious interaction. So she is a delight every time that she shows up on screen. So that puts her here at number 6. Number 5, I have Asterius. I mean, there's no way around it. This guy's just cool. I'm kind of a sucker for like the dark, tormented character like this. And Asterius puts an interesting wrinkle on it by sort of accepting his lot in the afterlife and embracing his role as the enforcer for Theseus, which is the man who killed him in life. And it's always fun to come across him for that pre-match warm-up before the big fight between the two of them at the end of Elysium. I'm always interested in what he has to say. And he's probably who's killed me. Maybe Hades. It's definitely between him and Hades. But he early on in my most recent playthrough, he was the one that would kill me more often than anything else. I think it took me 10 runs or so. We'll look at my stats here in a minute. But I think it would take me around 10 tries to break out the first time and actually get past Hades. But Asterius was definitely responsible for 3 at least, I would say, deaths on that run. So it kind of helped me build up some respect for the big guy. At number 4, I have Thanatos. Zagreus may give him a run for his money for this, but I don't think there's anyone quite as stylish as Thanatos. He's got this giant scythe, and Every time you finish talking to him, he just like poofs out of there real fast. It's always a nice touch. I mean, it's always a thrill to come across him on a when you're on a run, and then you just team up with him to just absolutely kick the unliving shit out of anything that moves in that room. But it's also like a friendly competition, like Lord of the Rings Legolas style, to see who can kind of rack up the most kills. So that's always fun. And then he also, there's kind of this undercurrent with him where he clearly has like these feelings for Zagreus that I think is very interesting. And I think it's kind of setting up what I'm thinking is probably going to be the most interesting romantic relationship available to Zagreus in the game. So I haven't obviously finished that plot line yet, but I'm very interested in seeing where that goes. So for now, Thanatos number 4 on my list. Number 3, I have Zagreus himself. Obviously, it's hard not to get attached to Zagreus given how much time you spend with him, as he is the lead character. I think it was an interesting move to make what is, kind of expected to be like this broody, unhappy child of Hades. And he is broody and unhappy. He wants nothing more than to get away from his home. But he's also shockingly polite and well spoken, despite his grievances and his upbringing, which I think is really interesting. He is the heart of the story, and it's his interactions with all the other characters that really give them life. So, you got to give him a lot of credit for that. And then he's also just one of the coolest looking main characters I've ever played in a video game that can kick the hell out of an army of undead. So, that does not hurt. That does not hurt his spot on this list. I've got him at number 3. But up at number 2, I do have Hades himself, the tormented father of the underworld. He's easily the deepest character in the game, and he plays. I would say that his role plays very similarly to the role that we see Kratos play with his son in the newer God of War games. But it's a great archetype, and it's really played to perfection here by the God of the underworld, who's ultimately the main antagonist of the game for the majority of it. His interactions with Zagreus rarely fail to get me to chuckle, especially when he's being unreasonably annoyed by him just for like various things that he's done. I have this video saved where I've picked a color for, I don't know, like the ground, like the tiling in this hallway by the house contractor. I like turned them red from whatever color they were, and he just looks up and goes, "A garish hue." I thought that was hilarious. So just stuff like that. His performance is great. His writing is great. Obviously he's a ass he can son of a bitch as the final boss of the game, so that's great. But then it's also like his love and respect for Persephone is very touching, and it really does a lot to ground him as perhaps the most complex and I would say interesting character in the game. So he's number 2. But up at number 1, I have to give it to Orpheus. As much as I love Hades, I just cannot help but put this depressed, museless bard at the top of the list. Orpheus looks ridiculous. He sounds ridiculous. He really is ridiculous in every way. Yet you can't help but feel for him in his plight. His reactions to Zagreus, whenever Zagreus tells him like tales of the valor that he's doing out in the underworld, it always is hilarious. He like genuinely reacts and is like amazed by Zagreus and is like, "Man, you're great." And I just always got to kick it out of that. It was very wholesome. And then, of course, finally convincing him to pick his loot back up and return to being a singer and expressing himself in song is one of the most satisfying moments in a game that's really full of satisfying moments. And obviously, I have the storyline with him and kind of reuniting him with Eurydice, and I haven't finished that, but that's definitely the thread that I'm the most interested in resolving. But I just really get a kick out of Orpheus. I love his music. I love that he is a depressed musician. I love how sweet he is to Zagreus despite all this. He's just an awesome character. So I got to give Orpheus number 1 on my list of the characters of Hades. Up next, why don't we rank the bosses of Hades? And I've got 8 here that I want to discuss. At the bottom here at number 8, I have the King Vermin fight. This is easily the most annoying boss I've come across, and it's also very rare. King Vermin is a fight that I have only encountered once in the however many runs I've done. I think it's like 30, 32 runs that I have right now. Well, let's see. I've got it right here. Yeah, I've done 32 escape attempts. I've only found him once. And when I did find him, he definitely took a chunk out of my life bar. He doesn't look different artistically as far as I could tell. From like the other little tiny rats that you encounter in that final area. But he has a ridiculously large health bar. He has frightening speed, and he has even scarier damage output, and it made for a challenge. So I've got him at number 8. Number 7, I have Charon. who I would probably consider the most surprising and difficult boss in the game. Charon only takes up arms against you on the rare occasions when he's left a bag of money out that Zagreus can then choose to try to steal. He catches you and he gets pissed off, and then you have to fight him. In my 32 runs, I've only done this twice, so twice as much as King Vermin, but yeah, but it's only happened to me a couple of times. And I did beat him both times, but it wasn't without losing at least one Death Defiance to him each time. He's really tough. He packs a hell of a punch, hard to avoid his attacks. And I think that he's my pick, like I said, for the hardest boss in the game. But number seven on in terms of just how much I like them. Number six, I have the Bone Hydra. Bone Hydra is a little repetitive with his many heads, but I do like how each of them has a randomized move set, which manages to keep things fresh no matter how many times you have to take them down. Number five, I have Meg. She's definitely the easiest boss in the game and also the first. She's it's still fun to go up against her though. Part of it is just because of her character work. She's clearly very annoyed with Zagreus' presence anytime that he walks into her chamber, and it also frustrates her that she can't stop him very well, which I love. But but beyond that, she moves fast and she has a fun move set, so it's always fun to take her on. Number four, I have Electo. I don't think Electo is as strong of a character as Meg, but she is slightly more difficult and therefore I think a little bit more fun to fight. So I have to give her the edge between the two. And then the number three, I have Tisiphone. She's definitely the hardest and fastest and most ridiculous of her sisters, and as such, she is my favorite to battle. I like her mechanic of gradually shrinking the room and getting down her attack patterns. She definitely had more attack patterns to learn, and so kind of getting those down took the most time and was the most satisfying for me to learn. So all three of them really have like kind of high speed battles, but hers is definitely the most challenging and I think the most rewarding. So I've got her at number three. At number two, I have Theseus and Asterius. I've always enjoyed boss fights with multiple enemies, and few are done as well as this one. You can take them down in either order, or you can try to whittle them down together. But it does usually make the most sense, I find, to just take the bull down first and then focus on Theseus, given that during his second phase, he gets help from a random member of the Greek pantheon, and that really can it really does shift the battle significantly, and it makes things significantly harder. So having to fight someone that's capable of using the same boons as you, and again, it gets a random buff that have different attack patterns. That's a thrill, and like the random nature of it just really invites more replayability. So it's a boss that doesn't really get old. But at the end of the day, I think I had to give number one to Hades himself. Like I said, I consider putting Theseus and Asterius above him, but there's no denying that the Hades fight is just the more mechanically deep of the two, and it's definitely, I think, the most satisfying to successfully navigate. His summoning of random enemies from across the underworld, it's another random touch that is nice, and he's got these screen filling bombs that you can either take out before they detonate or just dodge them when they explode. And then in his second phase, he starts moving a lot faster and he uses more damaging combos, and he unlocks this massive fire beam attack that has you scrambling for cover. And all of these things just kind of add to the chaos and fun and satisfaction of the fight and taking him down once and for all. Or at least until your next run through hell, anyway. So that's where I've got Hades at number one for the bosses. Up next, I want to rank the boons that you can get in the game. This is basically like essentially ranking the gods, but in terms of just like the moves that they can give you, the benefits that they give you for working with them. I've got them ranked here. Number 10, I still have Hermes at the bottom. Hermes is not helped by the fact that I have consistently beat my head against the wall trying to unlock his legendary boon called Bad News. No luck so far, but even beyond that, I really just don't think his aids are as useful as the others. He doesn't really, I don't, to my knowledge, he doesn't have any damaging boons, and so it all comes down to just sort of passive stuff, and a lot of it's like giving you more movement speed or more dodges, and those are cool, but I just don't really find that necessary because Zagreus is pretty nimble out of the box. So I got Hermes down number 10. Number 9, I have Ares. I like his doom ability okay, but pretty much everything else he gives to me is not, just doesn't do much for me. Like I don't like his damage buffs. They're just very standard and boring. And then like those rift moves that he does, I just think are not very good. They don't do much damage. So I got Ares at number 9. He also has a really bad call. At number 8, I have Zeus. Zeus, he kind of ranks surprisingly low given his status as, quote unquote, most powerful of the gods. But, honestly, I don't find his lightning strike abilities to do much, and I think his call is not very good. But what puts him above Ares is basically single-handedly his cast move, which can chain to other enemies, and it does really come in handy in some of the tougher areas of the game where you're getting swarmed by a lot of enemies at once. But against bosses, he's pretty useless. At number seven, I have Chaos. Chaos is kind of the toughest to rank, given how different his mechanics are. So rather than giving you an immediate perk, Chaos just sort of gives you a debuff, and then that morphs into a buff if you can make it through enough rooms first with that debuff active. And his buffs are not as colorful as the others. They're not like a unique thing that are special to him. They're usually like some sort of damage buff, or they'll give you like a buff to the resources that you are going to gather through the rest of your run. Um, but sometimes those buffs can end up being like some of the most powerful. Like if he gives you enough of a damage increase for a move that you like to use. So he's kind of a mixed bag, but I've got him at number seven there. Number six, I have Aphrodite. She's definitely one of the more passive gods in terms of her boons, which mostly resolve around debuffing enemies. But she's here because I really like her call ability that lets you take over the minds of enemies to kind of work for you as like a thrall for a few seconds at a time. And that's a lot of fun. But then also, if you just max out your bar and just use it against a boss, it actually packs a surprising punch and it's very satisfying to use. So, very versatile call, maybe my favorite call in the game. And so for that reason, I've given her the number six spot. Number five, I have Poseidon. So we're into like the really good ones now because Poseidon carries some of the best moves in the game, including the Tidal Dash, which is one of the best, maybe my second favorite of the dash attacks. And then his Greater Call that allows you to just pummel bosses when you get it upgraded. It's really powerful. And then I also like some of his passive boons. Like there's one that lets you instantly get treasure, and that's really kind of nice. And then there's another one that gives you an increased chance to find and catch fish, which I enjoy. And those fish you turn in back at the house to get some extra resources. So I've got Poseidon at number five. Number four, I have Dionysus. Dionysus boons are great across the board. They have large AoE effects and incremental poison damage, which has been one of my favorite maladies to cast on foes since my early days of playing Pokemon. He also has arguably the best passive boons in the game. He's got one that allows for full regeneration from fountains, and then another one that allows for a max, like just restore all your health back whenever you oh well that's what I just said, full regeneration from fountains. Then another one that allows you to increase your max health from nectar, which is already a highly prized find in the game because those are how you max out or build your relationship with the character. So that kind of increases even like the benefit of getting nectar. So yeah, for all those reasons I put Dionysus as number four. Number three, I have Artemis. I don't think there's a god with a better chaining effect than Artemis. She can make you shockingly powerful through her crit damage if you invest multiple boons with her on a singular run. While most of the gods have at least some boons that I'm not crazy about, I think Artemis is like all hits, no misses, which is why she's at number three. Number two, I have Athena. In some ways, Athena is the most useful because of her blocking ability and particularly her ability to send projectiles hurtling back toward their casters. It's probably the best ability in the game, especially whenever you have it on your dash, which already has generous iframes as it is. And then whenever you're using it to bounce back enemies' attacks against them, it's just extremely powerful and it makes some but pretty tough encounters. Like there's this one where there's like all these witches in Asphodel that just shoot a whole bunch of projectiles at you. But if you have Athena, then it just like completely trivializes that fight, which is really cool. And then you combine that with a call. Her call makes you invulnerable to damage, and if you max that out, then you're invulnerable for many seconds. So that can be very powerful. And then she also has multiple boons that can replenish used death defiances. And you put all that together, you have clearly the character that's the best position to keep you alive deep into your runs, and I think probably the clear MVP for new players. But at number one, I have Demeter. As good as Athena is, I think Demeter is just the perfect blend of offensive and defensive power. Her ice moves can pack a punch, but then their ability to slow enemies down is just a godsend against the late game bosses and a great defensive tactic. And then her fun twist on the cast ability is also a lot of fun. That kind of turns your cast into like these beams that also carry a lot of utility against bosses in particular. She's kind of the great boss buster, I would say, of all the gods. So all in, there's no god that I'm more excited to see when I'm on a run than Demeter, and I rarely return to the House of Hades with anything other than natural causes whenever she's on my side. So Demeter takes my top spot. Up next, I want to rank the weapons in the game. Starting with number six, I have the Adamant Rail. The rail is actually the first weapon that I managed to clear a run with on my first playthrough back when I was playing this game on the Switch. And so it's always going to hold a place in my heart for that. But at the end of the day, I do think it is the most cumbersome and boring weapon to use. The bullets just don't do enough damage to avoid having to, shoot enemies repeatedly. And while the special AoE move that it has is strong, it's got this long wind up that, in relative to its damage output, it's often disappointing unless it's heavily upgraded. So Adamant Rail I have is kind of the clear bottom pick there at number 6. Number 5, I had the Eternal Spear. I've just never fully jived with the spear as much as the other weapons. I find it to be underpowered compared to most of the other ones, and I don't really care for its ranged special move given its lack of impact. Upgraded, you can definitely do some damage with it, and its higher range compared to the other melee weapons can definitely come in handy. But I do strongly prefer the other weapons in the game other than the rail. So moving on to number 4, I have the Shield of Chaos. The Shield of Chaos is obviously the most defensively minded weapon in the game, and as a result, it's a great tool for beginners that are having trouble staying alive to the end. I don't much care for the standard shield throw mechanic, but I actually do like this alternate version that I've unlocked that allows it to just kind of stay out for an extended period of time, doing repeat damage over an area. And that I've found some real utility with. So for that, I've got it up at number 4. Number 3, though, I have the Heart-Seeking Bow. Being able to put out what is often surprisingly high damage at range is a really fun dichotomy to the game's more typical melee-focused movesets shared by most of the weapons, which makes the bow a clear standout. I really like the aspect that allows you to load your cast into the bow, which creates a particularly damaging shot whenever you fire. And then more than anything, I just really appreciate the shake-up and combat flow that the bow offers compared to the other weapons. At number 2, I have the Twin Fists of Malphun. While I find putting out damage with the twist to particularly on Hades at the end is a little bit of a challenge, because, and especially they have a short range, so you have to get up really close to him. But I do think that's kind of the hardest for me, at least, weapon to beat Hades with. But at the same time, I cannot help but enjoy using it in the run up to Hades, where you're just beating down on basically everything in my path, just against the regular foes. It's just so fun. It's definitely the fastest weapon in the game. The fists are really just fun. They have the most satisfying combos. You can pull off the uppercut move in tandem with the more fast-paced striking. And then they are absolutely to be feared when they're buffed by Demeter or any of the other boons that stack as well, because you stack them up real fast if you have them on your just main attack. So Twin Fist Malphun I have at number 2. Really great combo potential with it. But number 1, surprisingly enough, I have the Stygian Blade. I never expected to put which is the blade, which is Zagreus' base weapon, on top. But that'll change when I unlocked and wielded the fully upgraded power of the Aspect of Arthur, which is the hidden aspect of the blade. Each weapon kind of has a hidden aspect, and this is by far the coolest one I've unlocked so far. It basically gives like this that's sort of typically like blood hued, but it gives it like this glowing white exterior, and it imbues it with unbelievable strength, range, and even the ability to lower damage received from enemies at the cost of speed. So it is really awesome weapon that's so fun to use. And it's so cool that the bosses that you go up against when you have it equipped, that even they're like commenting on it. They're like, "Whoa, that is one awesome sword!" Or like they'll accuse you of stealing it somehow. They don't believe that Zagreus could have something that cool. And so all that together, it is just the aspect of Arthur has kind of single-handedly responsible for getting the Stygian Blade up to my favorite weapon in Hades. Honestly, one of my favorite weapons in any game. And mind you, this everything that I just told you, that is all based on one run that I did with that version of the blade, because I unlocked it very recently. So it is that awesome. This is this one run that I had with Aspect of Arthur put it up at the top spot. So that was that should tell you something there, how freaking cool it is. But I think that's pretty much it for the ranking that I wanted to do with Hades. I think the last thing that I want to do is just kind of take a look at my current profile on my PS5, and just kind of go through some of the stats and the things that I've done so far and the things that I still want to do. So to start off, let me pull up my trophies and kind of see how I'm doing when it comes to those. So far I have 50 trophies. Well, no, I'm sorry. There's 50 trophies in the game. So far I have, let's see here. So earned 16 in the last week, 7 in the last 30 days, 5 past that. So 7 plus 5 is 12, plus 16 is what? 28. So I have 28 of the trophies. So I think that means I've got 22 left. So in terms of the ones that I've gotten, obviously the kind of standard ones: escape Tartarus, escape Asphodel, use a greater call, buy 9 Well of Charon items in one escape attempt, clear Elysium. And then we kind of get into the more unique ones. I like fulfill the Chthonic colleagues prophecy. That's not really that big a deal. It's basically just talking to all the Chthonic gods. Clear an escape attempt, which by the way I did on January 15th. It's currently January 28th as I record this, so it has been going for a couple weeks. Me playing this game. Catch a fish from each region. Slay Skelly 15 times, pet Cerberus 10 times, unlock each of the infernal arms, max any weapon aspect, beat Thanatos by 15 or more. That's probably, that takes a little bit of skill. So I got that one on January 23rd. Choose 100 different Olympian boon effects. That took me a while. Earn a loyalty card, but it's basically defeat Charon in his boss fight. Trade 20 times with the Wretched Broker. Um, Fulfill the Master of Arms prophecy. I'm trying to remember what that is. I think that's maybe I think that's maybe have beating the game, like doing an escape with each weapon at least once. So yeah, I did that. I have at least one rank in each Mirror of Night talent. That was cool. It definitely encouraged me to really experiment more with all the different things that the mirror can give you. Pay for 50 jobs from the house contractor. Fulfill any 15 prophecies. Compel Orpheus to sing again. That was satisfying. Use an Olympian's greater call against them in a trial. I definitely remember having to go out of my way for that one. And actually like sacrifice some death defiances just to build up enough damage to be able to use the greater call. So that kind of sank that run, but hey, it was worth it. I got a trophy. Dark Reflections, full of Dark Reflections prophecy. I think that one was get out complete a run with each of the Mirror of Fate things active at least once. So it requires at least 2 runs. I think I did it and more than that, but that was fun. Can definitely had required me to change up my play style a little bit. Complete the main quest. Clear and escape with a hidden weapon aspect, which I did with the aspect of Arthur, as I just was talking about. Earn access to and enter the administrative chamber. Equip a chthonic companion and forge a bond with any character. So those are the ones that I have done. Now let's take a look at the ones that I have not done, which are Clear Elysium with the extreme measures condition active. I think that's like 6 heat, so I got to build up a little bit to before I do that. But I'm sure I'll be able to do it. Clear an Infernal Gate without taking damage. I actually have not unlocked any of the Infernal Gates yet because you have to have at least 5 heat to do it. And I think the most heat I've done in a run so far is 3. So I've got to build that up. Earn the first of Skelly's prizes. That requires 8 heat. And then the second requires 16. That seems like kind of like the last trophy in a way, because it's like a gold trophy, 8.8% of players have done, and 6.1% have the platinum. So that seems like kind of the, oh no, here's one with 7.6. Oh, max rank each standard keepsake. I'm definitely working on that. Once I max rank a keepsake, it's just like done. I don't use it anymore. So um, that is fun. I'm enjoying that process. Unlock each standard keepsake. I have them all except for the one that you get from Hades himself. So still waiting on that one. Earn all the Chthonic companions. I have one of the 6. I got the one from Skelly. Unlock all weapon aspects. I have them all except for there's 3 more hidden weapon aspects I haven't quite unlocked yet. We'll take a look at that here in a minute. Purge legendary boon. I haven't actually, you can do that anytime you get a legendary one. I really should do that, but I just, they're tough to give up because they're really powerful. So I just haven't gone through that yet. Choose 50 different dataless hammer enchantments. I think I'm definitely past the 40 mark on that, so I'm getting pretty close. And I think I've gotten all the ones for the gun, which is kind of nice because I don't have to use that one anymore for a while. Fully unlock the Olympian's Codex entries. I have unlocked all of them except for Demeter. She just has it requires you to just use her a lot more than the others for some reason. So I'm still working on her. Fulfill the Night and Darkness prophecy. I believe that is the one that has to do with Nyx and Chaos. Fulfill the War God's Bloodlust prophecy. I actually have you have to kill 10,000 enemies to get that and just talk to Hades. I actually have killed 10,000 enemies, but I haven't talked to Hades yet because, well, I have, but you have to like get up his affinity, and I haven't given him enough nectar yet. So working on that. Fulfill the Into Torment prophecy. That has to do with Sisyphus. Fulfill the Musician of Muse prophecy. That's Orpheus and Eurydice. Fulfill the Divided by Death prophecy. That's Achilles and Patroclus. So I'm excited to get through all these side quests. Those are probably the things that I'm the most interested in right now. Fulfill the Harsh Conditions prophecy. That's basically use at least each clear, yeah, do a clear, successful clear with each of the different heat things that you can put on yourself, which are basically like things that just make the game harder, at least once. And I've definitely done some of them, but I haven't done them all yet. Fulfill the slashed benefits prophecy. I can't remember what that one is. I think that has to do with like one of the you have to use one of the benefits package heat, which I have done once, but I didn't quite kill. You have to kill like certain enemies with that active, and I only did it the once, so I didn't quite kill everything that I need to. Because, like I mentioned, you don't see every enemy typically on each run, so I just need to do that in a couple more times, and I'll probably have it. Reach the epilogue of the story. So I think what I'm working on that now. What I have to do is get my relationship higher with the Olympic gods. So I'm working on that as we speak. Okay, and then the final two are like these very skill-based trophies that I haven't quite managed to pull off yet, even though I have tried, particularly with the 20% dodge chance with the Lambent Plume. Basically, you have to clear a room fast, and what it considers fast is nebulous. But then when you do, you basically increase your dodge chance by at first it's like 1%. My Lambent Plume is maxed, so it's a little bit higher than that. But I haven't quite got that. But I think with the aspect of Arthur, I might have a shot. And then the Thorn of Thanatos is get 30% bonus damage with the Pierced Butterfly. That's a different one. That one you have to it goes up by 1.5, I think, for me right now, every percent every time that I get through a room without taking any damage at all. So you just got to play more cautiously than I guess what I typically do. But I also haven't really been going for that one lately. So I'll give that a shot here pretty soon. But for now, those are the trophies that I have and still need to work on. So now I'm going to load up my file and we'll take a look at some of the stuff that I'm working on. So here we have, I'm in the administrative chamber and we can kind of take a look at, it's really cool. It like sums up all of your escape attempts. So very quickly, I can kind of go through my escape attempts. My first escape attempt, I was killed by Meg, which was the only time I think I've ever died to her. Second time I made it all the way to the Bull of Minos. That was pretty cool. I was using the bow that time. Third time, I was just killed in Elysium somewhere with the spear. Fourth time, I was killed by in Elysium somewhere with the bow. Fifth time, I was killed by the Bone Hydra with the spear. That is embarrassing. Sixth time, I was killed by Hades. So I made it to Hades on my sixth attempt. So that's pretty impressive, I feel. On my sixth attempt of the game, I made it all the way to Hades. I was using the bow on that one. Number seven, I was killed by the Soul Catcher in Elysium. So I guess that's like I don't know who the Soul Catcher is. It might be the butterfly thing. I think it is. That thing is annoying as fuck. Yeah, it's kind of like a little mini boss in there. That was when I was using the shield. At number eight, I just died in Styx somewhere. That was with the twin fists. Nine, I died in Elysium with the spear. 10, I died in Asphodel with the fists. 11 was my first escape attempt. So my 11th attempt is when I escaped for the first time, and I was using the blade, which was interesting. 12, I just died in Elysium with the fists. 13, I died from Hades with the rail. So that's interesting. So Hades only killed me once before I beat him. It's interesting. But then he did kill me at my 13th attempt. But my 14th attempt, I cleared with the spear. 15th attempt, I cleared with the shield. 16th attempt, I cleared with the bow. 17th attempt, I died to Hades with the rail. 18th attempt, I just died in Elysium with the spear. 19th, I escaped with the fists. 20th, I died to Hades with the rail. 21, I escaped with the rail and I had full health and full death defiances. So that classified as a perfect clear. So that was my best run. I don't know what I was packing on that one. I had the aspect of Eris, the evergreen acorn. Yeah, I think I just avoided death pretty well in that final boss there. So that's pretty impressive. Number 22, I escaped with the Shield of Chaos. Number 23, I died to Hades with a bow. 24, I died to Hades with a spear. 25, I escaped with the rail. 26, I escaped with the bow, and it gave me the Minotaur's toughness. I think that was just meant that I had a ton of health on that run. I just really built up my max health now, and it was like I think above 400 max health, which was crazy. So it was pretty likely that I was going to escape on that one. And then 27, I believe, was my final it was my escape where I completed the main story, and that was with the rail. 28, I escaped again with the blade. That was whenever I used the aspect of Arthur. That was really fun. 29, I just died in Elysium somewhere, the rail. 30, I died to Hades with the fists. 31, I got the Minotaur. Middle management cutter. Interesting. So I escaped and it gave me the middle management cutter. Let me look up what that means because they give you like these little um they give you like these little like notes of yeah, run clear messages, which I think is interesting. So let me see what that means. That means that I did 5+ mini boss encounters across Tartarus, Asphodel, Elysium, and Styx. That's cool. So yeah, I did 5 of those with the shield and still made it out. So that's pretty impressive. Number 32, I made it out with the spear, and that is it. Those are the all of the runs that I have done. So that's some interesting stats there. And then I think over here you can kind of see. Um, just like the weapons that I've used. So I've got the most clears right now with the shield and the adamant rail, both of which I have beaten the game with 3 times. And then I got out with the blade and the spear and the bow 2 times, and I actually have only completed a run once with the fists. So that's interesting. And I've actually never done it with heat with the fist. I never put any heat on with the fist and successfully cleared. So that's interesting. That's definitely the weapon that I struggle with the most. Most of these, like I said, it's just up against Hades. I struggle with this fist. He's got to get really close to him, and um, I don't think they could quite have the output that I'd like. The weapons I've used the most, the spear 7 times and the rail 7 times, then the bow with 6, and then the fist with 5. So that's 4 failed attempts with the fist. 4 with the Shield of Chaos and only 3 times with the Stygian Blade. And it was probably with the Aspect of Arthur, but my fastest time was with the Stygian Blade, and it was 32 minutes. And then the highest heat that I've done, it's one with all of them, except for I've done 2 heat on the Shield of Chaos and 2 heat with the Adamant Rail. This is interesting. My most used Olympic boons there's a tie for number 1 with 7 times. One of them is Flood Shot, which is a Poseidon boon, and then Quick Recovery, which is a Hermes boon. Number 6, then I have a bunch that are 6. I have the Auto Reload with Hermes, Divine Strike with I think that's Divine Strike. I think that might be Athena. Trippy Shot, that's definitely Dionysus. Drunken Strike, that's Dionysus. Greater Evasion, I think that's Hermes. Tempest Flourish is with Poseidon, and then Poseidon's aid obviously is with Poseidon. And then I have for 5 uses, I have the Passion Dash, which is Aphrodite, Deadly Flourish, Artemis, Divine Dash, which again I think that is Athena. Double Strike, which is Zeus. So those are kind of my most used. And then the one that I've cleared the most, look at that. Every time that I've ever had Trippy Shot, I have cleared it. With six times I've used it, 6 times I've cleared. So that's kind of cool. Interesting stat there. Yeah, so kind of some interesting stats when it comes to the boons that I've used. Let's take a look at my hammer upgrades. The one that I've used the most, there's 2. Tie for 2 is Explosive Fire and Extending Jab. Explosive Fire is with the bow, and Extending Jab is with the spear. So that's interesting. And then twice I've used Explosive Shot, Long Knuckle, Cluster Bomb, Delta Chamber, and Triple Jab. Okay. Um, then with the alternate aspects. Okay, so these are the aspects that I've used, like the weapon aspects. The aspect of Hera, I think that's a bow, is the one that I've used most with 3. And then the aspect of Hestia, I've used 3. And then with the aspect of Eris, Zeus, Ganyu, and Achilles, I've each used twice. Ganyu, the both times that I used it, I was not successful. It's like the hidden aspect for the spear, and it significantly lowers your health, but then you can get some health back. But I just find it not very intuitive to use. So yeah, obviously I've got some learning to do with that one. And then the special keepsakes. So the keepsakes I've used the most. And that's interesting. So it is the Chthonic coin purse, surprisingly, is the one that I've used the most. Tied with the conch shell, which is just me trying to get Poseidon boons. And then the Frostbitten Horn, Thunder Signet, Lucky Tooth, Evergreen Acorn, I've each used 6 times. Owl Pendant, Overflowing Cup, I've used 5. Lambent Plume, Eternal Rose, Blood Filled Vial, I've used 4. And it looks like the one that I've had the most success with, interestingly, is the Frostbitten Horn, which is the one that where you summon Demeter. So again, every time that I've used the horn, I've successfully completed my run. So interesting. I really love that it like keeps up stats with you on your runs like that, and it's fun to go back and reflect on those. So that's pretty much it. But I guess the last thing is I want to take a look at um which quests I have completed in the faded lists. Also, with my well here, I can see that I have done 32 attempts and killed, what is that, 11,118 enemies. So that's how many people I've killed so far. And then as far as the quests that I've completed for the faded list, it's actually quite a bit. Way more than I did in the first one. Because remember, in the first game, I only completed like 7. Here, I completed Denizens the Deep, which is catching a bunch of fish. Close at Heart, which is equipping all of the keepsakes. Dark Reflections, which is winning, like making clearing an escape with each of the Mirror of Night talents. So that was pretty good one. That's a pretty impressive one. Purchase each of the various goods from the Well of Charon, just getting Underworld Codex stuff. Completing 30 jobs with the House Contractor. What is this? Slaying various armored wardens in the game. So wanton ransacking, whatever. I did all of those. Let's see. Harness the ancient aspects of the infernal arms. Yeah, so basically just get all the infernal arms. I did that. Clear the game with each of the arms. I've done that. And then the adamant rail. This is actually cool. I actually got all the data list enchantments for Exegriff, the adamant rail. So that's a nice one. I reached the surface with the hidden aspect of Varatha. I reached the surface with the hidden aspect of Stygius. I have gotten all of the weapons, obviously. I have gotten all of the various curses that can be inflicted by chaos. That's an interesting one. I got that one done. And then this is basically like a bunch of boons. I've done all the boons from Demeter and Hermes and Dionysus and Artemis. This isn't counting their legendary boons, but all just their standard boons. So it's Demeter, Hermes, Dionysus, Artemis, Ares, Aphrodite, Poseidon, Zeus, Athena. So, I put some time in on this. Slay Skelly using Stygius with the max level Zagreus aspect. I did that. That kind of completed his little side quest. Work with the house contractor to release Orpheus, of course. Meet all of the Chthonic gods. Meet all of the Olympic gods. And then, of course, escape for the first time. So those are all the quests that I have done. The ones that I'm working on is earn the first of Skelly's prizes. Learn to play the lyre through training and practice. I'm actually not sure how to do that one, so I'll have to look into that one a little bit more. The slash benefits one, so I need to defeat a bruiser, savior, cloner, and burner with the Pact of Punishment benefits package condition unlocked. Harsh conditions, I'm about halfway through harsh conditions, which is basically finish the game while under the various Pact of Punishment conditions. I still need to do hard labor, lasting consequences, calisthenics program, underworld customs, 4-star overtime, routine inspection, approval process, and tight deadline. Still working on getting all the dataless enchantments for the Twin Fists, the Eternal Spear, the Shield of Chaos, the Heart-Seeking Bow, and the Stygian Blade, which is actually the one that I have the least on because it's the one I've used the least. So looking forward to using that blade some more. I need to reach the surface with the hidden aspect of the hidden of the Malfron Fist, which I just got. I still need to get a couple of different boons from Chaos that I haven't gotten yet. Then this is another thing I'm working on, which is basically the Power Without Equal and Divine Pairing. So these are boons where you basically put boons from 2 gods together for the divine pairings, and then you get the legendary boons for the Power Without Equal. And it just takes a lot of work and kind of some foresight into figuring out how to do that. You kind of have to look this stuff up. But I've gotten about half of the divine pairing ones, and not quite half, but close to half of the legendary ones. So just kind of working on those. The Musician and Muse quest with Orpheus and Eurydice, and Grow Closer. This is kind of my final for the epilogue here. Grow closer with more Olympians so the plan can unfold, which is Persephone's plan. And I don't know what it is yet, but we'll have to find out. So that's pretty much it. That's kind of everything that I have to say about Hades, and kind of a look at all of the different stats that I have with the Hades in my current run. It's definitely a masterpiece of a game, and this playthrough that I've been going through here has just really enhanced my love for it. I can't quite justify it putting it in my top 25, but it's easily my top 50 games of all time based on the strength of everything that we've discussed here today. I've enjoyed breaking it down and am interested in doing something similar on other podcasts in the future. We kind of did an episode on Bloodborne. Now we got this one on Hades. So if you have a game or a list that you'd like me to tackle in this fashion, write into the podcast and let me know at ControlledBurnes with an ES at gmail.com. Also, if you you enjoy the show and you want to hear more lists, please subscribe, follow, like, review, wherever you listen to your podcast. But for now, until next time. Keep it warm.